The sound of her steady breathing beside him in the darkness made Rhett Mitchell's heart race in a way he hadn't felt in 3 years, not since Caroline's last breath in the hospital. How had he ended up here, sharing a bed with Victoria Thornton, the woman who'd made his professional life a calculated hell for the past 2 years? As the blizzard howled outside their cabin window, he stared at the ceiling, remembering Harper's words that morning. "Daddy, I think the universe is about to change something big for you." If only his daughter could see him now, trapped in this impossible situation with the last person he'd ever expected to understand his struggles as a single father. 3 days earlier, the morning had begun. The way every morning began for the past 1,000 days in the sacred darkness before dawn, when the world still belonged to fathers and their promises. Rhett's eyes opened at 5:15 without the alarm, his internal clock calibrated by 3 years of single parenthood. The bedroom was cold February in Denver, unforgiving even inside the small craftsman house he and Caroline had bought when Harper was born. He could still feel her absence in the empty space beside him, a phantom cold that no amount of time seemed to warm. The routine steadied him. Coffee first. French press, the way Caroline had insisted, even though a drip machine would have been easier. She'd said something about honoring the beans, about taking time for things that mattered. He'd rolled his eyes then. Now he guarded that ritual like a prayer. While the coffee steeped, he assembled Harper's lunch with the precision of an engineer. Sourdough bread from the bakery on 32nd Avenue, toasted just enough to add structure without crunch. Turkey from the deli counter, not the pre-packaged kind Caroline had been particular about nitrates. Lettuce, tomato, a thin spread of mayo on both slices to prevent sogginess. Cut diagonal, never straight across. Harper had opinions about sandwich geometry that rivaled her opinions about everything else. The sticky note came next, yellow square of paper that would be tucked between the sandwich and the apple slices. His handwriting looked nothing like Caroline's elegant script, but the words carried the same love. "Sing like nobody's listening, baby girl. But no daddy is listening from the front row. Love you more than all the stars. Dad." He checked her math homework in the binder, 20 problems on fractions that she'd conquered with the same fierce determination she applied to everything. "Excellent work, Harper," he wrote in the margin, adding a smiley face that looked more like a lopsided potato. Caroline would have drawn something beautiful. He did his best. The concert dress hung on the closet door in Harper's room, white cotton with eyelet lace pressed and ready. He'd learned to iron from YouTube videos at 2 in the morning, those early days after Caroline died, when sleep was impossible, and domestic skills were survival. The blue ribbon lay coiled on her dresser, waiting to hold back those blonde curls that refused to be tamed. At 6 o'clock, he pushed open Harper's door, letting the hallway light spill across her room in a gentle wedge. She slept like she did everything else, with total commitment, sprawled across the twin bed in a tangle of Disney princess sheets and mismatched stuffed animals. Mr. Whiskers, the threadbare bunny Caroline had given her as a newborn, was clutched against her chest like a talisman against the dark. Rhett sat on the edge of the bed, careful not to wake her too abruptly. Caroline had taught him that, how the first moments of waking set the tone for the whole day. His hand smoothed the blonde curls away from her face, and the familiar ache expanded in his chest. She looked so much like her mother in sleep when the constant motion stopped and he could see the features that haunted his dreams. "Rise and shine, warrior princess." Harper's nose scrunched her face, burrowing deeper into the pillow. 5 more minutes. "You said that yesterday and we almost missed the bus." One blue eye cracked open, then both, and suddenly she was bolt upright, hair standing in every direction like she'd been shocked. Concert day. Her excitement was a physical force, infectious and terrifying. Rhett felt his chest tighten with the weight of what he had to do, later the news that would shatter this joy. But not yet. Let her have the morning. Downstairs, scrambled eggs and toast anchored her to the chair long enough to eat, though her feet swung in constant rhythm beneath the table, keeping time to some internal music only she could hear. She hummed between bites, running through scales that sounded impossibly pure, coming from someone who still lost her front teeth. Ms. Brennan says my voice has remarkable purity. What does that mean? Rhett set down his coffee, studying his daughter's earnest face. Means you got your mama's talent, sweetheart. She had a voice that could make grown men cry. Harper's fork paused halfway to her mouth. Do you think Mommy can hear me sing from heaven? The question landed like it always did, unexpected, devastating, necessary. I know she can. And I know she's so proud of you, she's probably bragging to all the angels. Will you be in the front row? So when I look down, I'll see you there. The lie tasted like ash. Front row, center seat. Wild horses couldn't drag me away. Harper tilted her head, studying him with an intensity that made him uncomfortable. At 8 years old, she'd developed an unsettling ability to read him, to sense the currents beneath his words. You promise? I promise, baby girl. She nodded, satisfied, and returned to her eggs, but then she said something that made his blood run cold. I had a dream about Mommy last night. Rhett's hand froze on his coffee mug. Yeah. What did she say? She said something big is about to change for you. Something about a storm and a choice. Harper's voice dropped to a whisper like she was sharing a secret. And she said it's okay to let someone new in. That she wants you to be happy. The words hung in the kitchen air like smoke refusing to dissipate. Rhett forced a laugh that sounded hollow even to his own ears. That's a pretty grown-up dream for someone who's 8. I'm 8 3/4. That's basically 9. Before he could respond, a key turned in the front door, and Mrs. Helen Pemberton bustled in without knocking, trailing the scent of fresh blueberry muffins and Chanel No. 5. The 73-year-old widow who lived 3 doors down had appointed herself their guardian angel the week after Caroline's funeral, and Rhett had learned to accept her help even when his pride fought against it. Good morning, my darlings. Big day today, isn't it, Harper? Harper launched herself at Mrs. Pemberton with the same enthusiasm she brought to everything, wrapping thin arms around the older woman's waist. Did you practice the recording thing on your phone? 3 times, sweetheart. I'll capture every single note. Rhett caught Mrs. Pemberton's eye over Harper's head and saw the knowing look there. She'd been married for 48 years before her husband died. She understood about promises made to children, about the weight of being the only parent left standing. The drive to Eisenhower Elementary took 12 minutes through morning traffic. Harper's voice filling the cab of his 2014 Ford F-150 with snippets of song and running commentary about everything they passed. The truck was practical, reliable, American-made everything Rhett tried to be. It had a dent in the rear bumper from when he'd backed into a pole 2 months after Caroline died, functioning on 3 hours of sleep and grief that felt like drowning. At the drop-off circle, Harper unbuckled her seatbelt but didn't immediately bolt like usual. She turned to him, her face serious. Daddy, what if I forget the words? You won't. But even if you did, you'd make up new ones, and they'd be beautiful. Promise you won't be late. Sometimes your work keeps you. The second lie of the morning lodged in his throat like broken glass. I promise, baby girl. Nothing is more important than you. She studied his face one more moment, then leaned over to kiss his cheek. When she jumped down from the truck, she turned back and blew him a kiss, their ritual since she was 3. He caught it out of the air and pressed it to his heart, watching her blonde curls bounce as she ran toward a cluster of friends near the entrance. Drive away, thinking everything will be fine, he told himself. Get through one more day of Victoria Thornton's demands, then it's all about Harper. He had no idea that in exactly 2 hours and 43 minutes, Victoria would detonate his carefully constructed life like a demolition expert with a taste for cruelty. Thornton Industries occupied a glass tower on Broadway in downtown Denver, 22 floors of steel and ambition that reflected the Rocky Mountains in its western face. The lobby was all black granite and chrome, the massive logo proclaiming Thornton Industries, established in 1987, in letters that could be read from 3 blocks away. James Thornton had built an empire from nothing, and he'd made damn sure everyone knew it. The elevator to the 18th floor was all mirrors and uncomfortable silence. 8 strangers avoiding eye contact while secretly assessing each other's reflections. Rhett had learned to recognize the floor by smell. 18 reeked of anxiety and instant coffee, the particular aroma of middle management slowly grinding itself to dust. His cubicle sat in the corner, a 6-by-6-foot kingdom with a window view of the 16th Street Mall. 3 monitors dominated his desk, Bloomberg terminal on the left, Excel models in the center, email on the right. The Bloomberg subscription alone cost more than most people's monthly rent, but it was the lifeblood of financial analysis. Real-time market data corporate filings analyst reports information that could make or break million-dollar decisions. He'd barely logged in when the whispers started. Blake Harrison leaned over the cubicle partition, his prematurely gray hair making him look older than his 42 years. 20 years at Thornton Industries had carved deep lines around his eyes and mouth, the geography of slow disillusionment. "Did you hear about Anderson?" Rhett pulled up his email queue, 47 messages since he left yesterday at 6. "What about him? Fired. Last Friday. 23 years with the company gone in 15 minutes. Bryce Keller rolled his chair over his former college linebacker frame, barely contained by his button-down shirt. "What did he do?" Asked for paternity leave. 2 weeks with his new baby. Blake's laugh was bitter as burnt coffee. Victoria told him they hired him to work, not procreate. Those were her exact words. Anderson's wife recorded the conversation. Elena Foster, the newest member of their team, looked up from her cubicle with wide eyes. Fresh MBA from Colorado State, 29 years old, still believing merit and hard work mattered more than political survival. "That's illegal, isn't it? Only if you can prove it." Anderson signed an NDA for his severance package. "She's untouchable." Bryce glanced at Rhett, something like pity in his expression. "You're the last single parent standing, Mitchell. How the hell do you survive?" Blake answered before Rhett could. "He doesn't say no. Ever. Weekends, holidays, 3 in the morning, he shows up. Delivers above target every quarter. That's the price of survival in the Ice Queen's kingdom." "That's not sustainable," Elena said quietly. "Neither is unemployment." Blake's eyes held the haunted look of someone who'd seen too many colleagues escorted out by security cardboard boxes filled with desk photos and coffee mugs that proclaimed #1 dad to an empty apartment. At 8:30, exactly the atmosphere in the office changed. It was like watching a nature documentary about prey animals sensing a predator. Everyone's shoulders tensed, typing accelerated conversations died mid-sentence. Victoria Thornton emerged from the elevator on the 22nd floor, but took the stairs down to 18, her heels announcing her arrival like a drumbeat. The sound was distinctive, deliberate Louboutin burgundy, the kind that cost more than Rhett's mortgage payment. She wore power like a second skin. Today's armor, a Valentino suit in navy blue so dark it was almost black. Ice blonde hair pulled back in a severe bun that didn't allow a single strand to escape. High cheekbones, sharp jawline lips painted the red of fresh wounds. She was 36 years old but could have been 30 or 45, her face a mask that gave away nothing about the years behind those Arctic gray-blue eyes. Beautiful in the way a glacier is beautiful, remote, dangerous, capable of grinding everything in its path to dust. The office parted around her like the Red Sea, everyone suddenly fascinated by their monitors. She walked through without acknowledging a single person, her presence enough to accelerate heart rates and spawn fresh anxiety. When she passed Rhett's cubicle, she didn't look at him. But she paused for half a beat, barely perceptible, before continuing to the executive elevator. 30 seconds later, his email chimed. From V. Thornton at Thornton Industries. Com. To G. Mitchell at Thornton Industries. Com. Subject. No subject. Body. My office. 9 Road AM sharp. Do not be late. Elena's face appeared over the partition, fear naked in her eyes. Oh no, that's the email. What email? Blake's voice came from behind. Everyone who got that email in the past year is gone. Anderson got it. Jenkins got it. Patterson got it. Clear your desk while you still can. Rhett's eyes found the wall calendar Thursday circled in red Sharpie. Harper's concert, 7 p.m. His gut twisted with a premonition he couldn't name, a sense that something fundamental was about to shift in a direction he couldn't control. The memory hit him like a fist 6 months ago, Friday evening at 5:15. He'd been packing his bag, mentally planning the weekend camping trip he'd promised Harper. 3 days in Rocky Mountain National Park, just the two of them, fishing in the morning and telling ghost stories around the campfire at night. Victoria had appeared like a ghost, her presence announced only by the sudden drop in temperature. Mr. Mitchell, I need revised Q3 projections by Monday morning at 8. Ms. Thornton, I have plans with my daughter this weekend. Could I deliver them Monday afternoon instead? Her eyes had been flat, emotionless, regarding him like he was a mildly disappointing spreadsheet. Your personal arrangements are not my concern. The board meeting is Monday at 9. Projections by 8 or don't bother coming in. That weekend was the first time Harper had asked him why Mommy dying meant Daddy had to disappear too. He'd worked 16 hours Saturday, 12 hours Sunday, fueled by gas station coffee and the kind of exhaustion that made his vision blur. The projections were delivered at 7:45 Monday morning, and Victoria's only response had been a single word: adequate. Now at 8:55, Rhett stood and straightened his tie. Blake clapped him on the shoulder. Good luck. You'll need it. The executive elevator to the 22nd floor was carpeted silent, except for the mechanical whisper of its ascent. The hallway beyond was all thick carpet and hushed reverence, executive portraits lining the walls like a gallery of corporate saints. James Thornton's portrait showed a man with kind eyes and a genuine smile. The beloved founder who'd treated employees like family. Victoria's portrait, hung beside her father's, could have been carved from ice severe cold. Beautiful in the way a blade is beautiful. At exactly 9 o'clock, Rhett knocked on her door. Enter. Victoria's office occupied the corner penthouse suite, floor-to-ceiling windows, offering a 270-degree view of Denver and the Rockies beyond. The desk was black walnut Italian design, probably cost more than Rhett's truck and mortgage combined. Her chair was throne-like, high-backed leather that forced visitors to look up at her even when she sat. The temperature in the room was noticeably colder than the hallway thermostat, set to 64 degrees. Rhett had heard rumors she kept it that way deliberately, using discomfort as another tool in her arsenal. There were no decorations, no personal touches, nothing that suggested a human being actually occupied this space. Except for one detail that caught Rhett's attention, a small photo frame on the shelf behind her desk placed face down. He'd never noticed it before, had never been invited close enough to her inner sanctum to see. Victoria sat backlit by the windows, her face in shadow. She didn't gesture for him to sit, so he stood 6 feet from her desk and waited while she typed on her laptop for a full minute. The power play was obvious, deliberate, and effective. Every second of silence ratcheted up his anxiety another notch. Finally, she looked up. "Close the door, Mr. Mitchell." He did. "Aspen, Jennings' presentation, Thursday morning." The world tilted. This Thursday, as in 2 days from now. She pushed a leather folder across the desk. Company helicopter leaves 7 a.m. from the private hangar. Will overnight at the Little Nell. Presentation Friday morning at 9. Return Friday evening. Ms. Thornton, with respect, I wasn't aware this was scheduled. It wasn't. Jennings moved the meeting up. They're considering two firms for their financial restructuring. We present first. Winner takes an $18 million annual contract. I understand the stakes are high, but Thursday evening my daughter has... Victoria stood abruptly, the motion sharp enough to make him flinch. Stop. Right there. The silence stretched between them like a wire pulled too tight. She walked to the window, presenting her back to him silhouetted against the mountains. Let me save us both time, Mr. Mitchell. I know exactly what you're going to say. Your daughter has a school event, a recital, a game, some milestone, and you're the only parent she has, and you've never missed one. Am I close? The accuracy was unsettling. Her winter concert. She has a solo. She's 8 years old and she's been practicing for 3 months. Victoria's shoulders tensed, something in her posture shifting. When she spoke, her voice dropped to something barely above a whisper. I had a daughter once. Rhett's brain stuttered. What? She turned around, and for a split second, her face was naked, raw grief and bottomless loss written in every line before the mask slammed back down. I said I understand having obligations. Ms. Thornton, I don't think you... The Jennings account represents 22% of our projected Q1 revenue. Your daughter's concert is 90 minutes. I need my best financial analyst in that room, and that's you. Rhett's hands clenched into fists at his sides. He forced himself to breathe, counting to 10 the way his therapist had taught him after Caroline died. When he opened his eyes, Victoria was watching him with an expression he couldn't read. I've worked here 6 years. I've never said no. Weekends, holidays, middle of the night I've shown up. I've delivered results above target every single quarter. I'm asking not as an employee, but as a father. Please, find someone else. Something flickered across her face. There is no one else. Blake Harrison, Bryce Keller, either could present these numbers. They don't have your precision, your instinct. Jennings is particular about who he trusts. He responds to you. Then move the presentation. 1 week, that's all I need. Victoria returned to her desk, sitting with the careful precision of someone who'd turned self-control into an art form. Jennings won't reschedule. If we don't present Thursday, Patterson Consulting wins by default. 150 jobs depend on this contract, Mr. Mitchell. 150 families. The words landed like a punch. You're saying if I choose my daughter, I'm responsible for 150 people losing their jobs. I'm saying choices have consequences. Leadership means making hard calls. Something inside Rhett snapped. Leadership means understanding that employees are human beings, not machines you can run until they break. The silence that followed was dangerous, the kind that preceded either explosions or terminations. Victoria's eyes narrowed, and he realized he'd crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. Are you quite finished? I apologize. That was unprofessional. Yes, it was. Victoria stood and walked around her desk, stopping 3 feet from him, closer than she'd ever been outside of a conference room. This close, he could smell her perfume, something expensive and cold, like winter roses. She was tall, 5'9" in heels, and met his eyes directly. Let me tell you something about sacrifice, Mr. Mitchell. My father built this company from nothing, 80-hour weeks for 30 years. He missed my birthdays, missed my graduations, missed my wedding. Her voice cracked on the last word before she caught it. When he died 2 years ago, the board questioned whether a woman his daughter could fill his shoes. They wanted outside management, wanted to strip everything he built from family control. She paused, and Rhett saw something in her eyes that looked almost human, almost vulnerable. So I made a choice. I became twice as hard, twice as demanding, twice as perfect. Because one mistake, one sign of weakness, and they'd take it all away. Everything he died building. Rhett felt his anger soften into something more complicated. That doesn't mean you have to be cruel. Their eyes met and held. Doesn't it? Kindness is weakness in this world. Compassion is exploited. I learned that the hard way. What happened to your daughter? The mask slammed down so fast it was like watching a door close. I don't have a daughter. You misheard. Ms. Thornton, the helicopter leaves at 7 a.m. sharp. Bring an overnight bag, business formal. Do not be late. She returned to her desk already typing, dismissing him without another word. Rhett stood, frozen calculations running through his head. Mortgage $2,400 a month. Harper's expenses $800. Savings maybe 3 months if he stretched it 4 if he cut everything to the bone. Job market in Q1, frozen solid. Harper's face when he told her he'd chosen work over her concert, devastating. And if I refuse, Victoria didn't look up. Then clean out your desk by end of business today. I'll have security escort you out. The choice wasn't really a choice at all. It was survival dressed up as decision-making. I'll be there. Excellent. Email me your final Jennings projections by 5 p.m. today. Already done. Sent them at 7 this morning. For the first time, Victoria looked surprised. She pulled up her email, scrolled, clicked. Her eyes scanned the document, and something like respect flickered across her face. You anticipated this. I'm always prepared, Ms. Thornton. That's why you need me. His hand was on the door when he turned back, the words slipping out before he could stop them. For what it's worth, I think your father would be proud of your success. But I think he'd be heartbroken by the cost. Victoria flinched like he'd struck her. Get out! He did. The door closed, and Rhett stood in the hallway breathing hard, feeling like he'd just survived something that should have killed him. Through the frosted glass of her office door, he could see Victoria's silhouette motionless at her desk. What he couldn't see was her walking to the shelf, picking up the face-down photo frame, looking at the ultrasound image labeled Baby Girl Thornton, April 2019. Couldn't see the single tear that escaped before she wiped it away with angry efficiency. Couldn't see her set the frame back down face down and return to her laptop with a mask that could have been carved from stone. Back at his desk, Rhett pulled out his phone and stared at Harper's contact photo, gap-toothed smile, eyes full of trust, wearing the Daddy's Girl t-shirt he'd bought her for Christmas. His thumb hovered over the call button for 30 seconds before he put the phone away. Not yet. Let her have one more day of excitement. One more day of believing her father kept his promises. Blake appeared over the cubicle partition. You're still here. Does that mean business trip, Thursday and Friday, Aspen? The Jennings presentation? That's huge. Blake's eyes narrowed. Thursday? Isn't that Harper's concert? Yeah. Jesus, Mitchell, you can't miss that. I don't have a choice. There's always a choice. Rhett looked up at Blake, saw the judgment there mixed with pity. When you have 3 months of savings and a daughter who needs a roof over her head, there's no choice. There's just survival. The rest of the day passed in a blur of spreadsheets and conference calls, but Rhett's mind was elsewhere. At 3:15, he called Mrs. Pemberton. Helen, I need a favor, a big one. Her voice was warm, maternal, everything he needed in that moment. Anything, dear. You know that. I have to go out of town for work, Thursday and Friday. Harper's concert is Thursday night. The silence on the other end was heavy with disappointment. Oh, Rhett. I know, but I need you to be there. Record everything, every note, every moment. Can you do that? Of course I will, but Rhett, that child needs her father, not a video. I don't have a choice, Helen. If I say no, I lose my job. If I lose my job, we lose everything. She sighed, and he could picture her shaking her head in her kitchen, surrounded by the photos of her own children and grandchildren. I'll be there, front row. I'll make sure she knows you wanted to be. Thank you. I'll pick her up tonight and tell her. The drive to the school felt like driving to an execution. Harper bounced into the truck with her usual enthusiasm, chattering about how Ms. Brennan said her vibrato was improving, and how Tommy Harris finally admitted that girls could sing better than boys. At home, he ordered pizza, her favorite pepperoni and extra cheese, and waited until she was halfway through her second slice before he spoke. "Princess, I need to talk to you about Thursday." Harper's hand froze slice halfway to her mouth. Her eyes met his, and he watched the light in them dim. She was too young to have that kind of resignation in her face, too young to anticipate disappointment like it was inevitable. "You're not coming to my concert." Not a question. A statement of fact. "Baby girl, I have to go on a business trip. To Aspen. My boss says if I don't go, I might lose my job." Harper set down her pizza, carefully wiping her hands on a napkin with Caroline's methodical precision. "The mean lady boss, the one who looks sad. She's not mean exactly, she has a hard job. She's under a lot of pressure. Mommy used to say hurt people hurt people. Is your boss hurt?" The question landed like a stone in still water ripples spreading outward. Rhett thought about Victoria's face when she'd said, "I had a daughter once." Thought about the photo frame placed face down the crack in her voice when she mentioned her wedding. "Yeah, Princess, I think maybe she is." Harper nodded, processing this with the seriousness of a judge. "Then I guess you should go. Someone needs to be nice to her. Maybe it'll help." "Harper, you don't have to." "It's okay, Daddy." But her chin trembled, giving away the lie. "Mrs. Pemberton will record it. We can watch it together when you get home." Rhett moved to kneel beside her chair, taking her small hands in his. "I'm so sorry. I've never missed anything important before. Not one thing since Mommy." "I know. That's why it's okay for you to miss this one. You've earned it." She was trying to comfort him, and the role reversal broke something inside his chest. "Come here." He pulled her into a hug, breathing in the scent of her strawberry shampoo, feeling the solid reality of her in his arms. This was what mattered. Not spreadsheets or contracts or Victoria Thornton's approval. This. "Will you at least try to get back in time if your meeting ends early?" Another promise he shouldn't make. "I'll do everything I can, baby girl. Everything." That night, he tucked Harper into bed and read 2 chapters of Charlotte's Web, instead of one dragging out their routine like he could stop time through force of will. She fell asleep holding his hand, and he sat there in the glow of her nightlight for 20 minutes, watching her chest rise and fall, memorizing the curve of her cheek. In his own room, he packed with mechanical efficiency. Suit, dress shoes, toiletries, laptop. Set 5 alarms, paranoid about missing the helicopter. Looked at the family photos on his dresser. Caroline, pregnant Harper as a newborn, their last vacation to Rocky Mountain National Park, before the aneurysm destroyed everything. His phone buzzed. Text from Mrs. Pemberton. "I'll take care of our girl. But Rhett Victoria Thornton isn't worth sacrificing your daughter's trust. Some costs are too high." He stared at the message for a long time before typing back, "I know, but what choice do I have?" Sleep came in fragments, interrupted by dreams of Caroline telling him he was failing their daughter, that he'd broken his promise to always put Harper first. He woke at 4:30, an hour before his alarm, and couldn't fall back asleep. Thursday morning at 5:45, he stood in Harper's doorway, watching her sleep. He'd already loaded his bag in the truck, already left money and instructions for Mrs. Pemberton, already done everything except the one thing that mattered: say goodbye to his daughter before breaking her heart. But she looked so peaceful, and waking her would mean watching her try to be brave, watching her swallow disappointment like medicine. So he left a note on her nightstand instead. The coward's way out. "Had to leave early. Mrs. P will take you to school. I love you more than all the stars in all the skies. We'll call tonight before the concert. You're going to be amazing. Dad." The drive to the private hangar took 40 minutes in pre-dawn darkness. The helicopter was already there, a sleek black Bell 407 with the Thornton Industries logo on the side. Victoria stood beside it in a charcoal wool coat and dark sunglasses despite the early hour, looking like she'd stepped out of a fashion magazine's Power Women of Wall Street spread. The pilot loaded Rhett's bag without comment. Victoria climbed into the helicopter without acknowledging him, already absorbed in her tablet. Rhett followed, buckling into the leather seat across from her as the rotors began their ascending whine. Denver fell away beneath them, the city lights giving way to the purple-gray mountains as the sun crept toward the horizon. Victoria worked without pause, fingers flying across her tablet screen, answering emails and reviewing documents with the focus of someone who'd learned to turn every moment into productive time. Rhett pulled out his phone, but there was no signal this high up. Harper would be waking soon, finding his note, trying to be brave. The thought sat in his stomach like lead. An hour into the flight, Victoria spoke without looking up. "Your projections were impressive. The sensitivity analysis on the worst-case scenarios was particularly thorough." He blinked, surprised by the compliment. "Thank you. Jennings will push back on the timeline. He always does. Be prepared to defend the 18-month implementation window." "I can handle Jennings." "I know, that's why you're here." She returned to her tablet, but the brief exchange hung in the air between them. Rhett studied her profile against the window's sharp lines and careful control, but underneath it, something that looked almost like loneliness. The Little Nell Resort sprawled across the base of Aspen Mountain, all stone and timber and luxury, that catered to people who measured their wealth in private jets rather than commercial first class. Their rooms were on the 14th floor, 2 doors apart, each probably costing more per night than Rhett's mortgage payment. Victoria disappeared into her room with instructions to meet in the lobby at 2 for a prep session. Rhett unpacked his suit, checked his presentation notes, and called Harper. Mrs. Pemberton answered. "She's eating breakfast. Want to talk to her?" "Please." Harper's voice came on the line, bright but brittle. "Hi, Daddy. Did your helicopter crash?" "No, baby girl. We landed safe and sound. I'm in Aspen now. How was the note?" "It was okay. I would have rather said goodbye for real, but..." "Mrs. P says you were being thoughtful by letting me sleep." Guilt twisted in his chest. "I'm sorry, Harper. I'm so sorry about tonight." "It's okay. I'm going to pretend you're in the front row anyway. Sometimes pretending makes things more real." The wisdom of that statement coming from an 8-year-old nearly undid him. "You're going to be amazing tonight. The best singer they've ever had." "I love you, Daddy. I love you more than all the stars." When he hung up, he sat on the edge of the hotel bed and let himself feel the full weight of what he'd done, chosen money over promises. Fear over faith. Caroline would have been furious. He was furious at himself. But fury didn't pay mortgages or keep roofs overhead or put food on tables. Fury was a luxury he couldn't afford. At 2 o'clock, he met Victoria in the lobby. She'd changed into a different suit, charcoal gray, this time her armor adjusted, but no less impenetrable. They reviewed the presentation for 2 hours, Victoria dismantling his arguments and forcing him to rebuild them, stronger testing every weak point until the logic was bulletproof. By 6 p.m., when they finally broke for dinner, Rhett's head was pounding and his phone showed 8 missed calls from Mrs. Pemberton. He excused himself and stepped outside to call back. "Rhett, the concert starts in an hour. Harper keeps asking if you'll make it." His watch showed 6:14 p.m. Denver was 2 hours away by helicopter, but the weather had turned. Through the resort windows, he could see snow beginning to fall thick and fast. "Tell her I'm trying. Tell her I love her." "She knows that. But Rhett, she needs you to be there." "I know. I'm sorry. I'm so goddamn sorry." At 7:03 p.m., his phone buzzed with a photo from Mrs. Pemberton. Harper on stage in her white dress, blonde curls held back with the blue ribbon microphone in hand, eyes scanning the audience with desperate hope. The next text was a video file 42 seconds long. He sat in the hotel lobby and watched his daughter sing the first verse of Winter Wonderland with a voice like spun glass. pure and achingly beautiful, and he watched her eyes search the crowd, landing on the empty seat in the front row before quickly looking away, her smile never faltering, even as tears gathered at the corners of her eyes. When the video ended, Rhett realized he was crying. A businessman walking through the lobby averted his eyes, granting him the privacy of pretending not to see. His phone rang. Harper's number. "Daddy. Hey, baby girl. You were absolutely perfect. The best singer I've ever heard. You watched. Mrs. Pemberton sent me a video. Harper, I'm so proud of you. I looked for you. I knew you weren't there, but I looked anyway, just in case the universe changed its mind." The words carved into him like a blade. "I'm so sorry. I wanted to be there more than anything. I know. It's okay. Work is important too." But her voice said it wasn't okay, that some things couldn't be forgiven with apologies and good intentions. They talked for 10 more minutes, Harper trying to be cheerful while he tried not to let her hear him crying, and when they hung up, Rhett sat in the lobby and stared at nothing. "Mr. Mitchell." He looked up to find Victoria standing there, still in her armor of suit and heels, but her face had softened into something he'd never seen before, concern. "Is everything all right? My daughter's concert just ended. I missed it." Victoria sat down in the chair across from him, and the gesture was so unexpected that he forgot to be angry at her. She said nothing for a long moment, just sat there in the expensive lobby while snow fell outside the windows. Finally, she spoke, her voice quieter than he'd ever heard it. "What's her name?" "Harper." "How old?" "8. 8 3/4, she says." "What did she sing?" "Winter Wonderland. First verse solo." He pulled up the video on his phone, hesitated, then turned it toward Victoria. "Would you like to see?" She took the phone like it might burn her, and Rhett watched her face as the video played, watched something crack in her expression as Harper's voice filled the small speaker, watched her eyes when Harper searched the crowd for her father, watched a single tear escape before Victoria caught it and wiped it away with the same angry efficiency he'd imagined in her office. She handed the phone back. "She's remarkable. You must be very proud." "I am. I just wish I'd been there to tell her in person." Victoria stood abruptly. "Get some rest, Mr. Mitchell. Tomorrow's presentation requires us both at our best." She walked away, heels clicking on marble, but at the elevator she paused and looked back. Their eyes met across the lobby, and something passed between them, understanding maybe, or the beginning of it. Then she was gone, and Rhett was alone with his phone and the video he'd watched 17 times, memorizing the moment his daughter's heart broke, even as her voice soared. That night, he lay in a hotel bed that cost more than he made in a week and stared at the ceiling, thinking about Victoria's question. What's her name? Thinking about the tears she'd tried to hide. Thinking about, I had a daughter once, and the photo frame placed face down. Somewhere in Denver, Harper was going to bed with Mrs. Pemberton, reading her stories, pretending everything was fine. Somewhere in this same hotel, Victoria Thornton was probably working her armor back in place. And Rhett was trapped between them, between the life he'd promised his daughter and the survival he owed her, between the past he couldn't let go, and a future he couldn't see clearly. Outside, the snow fell harder, and by morning, they would both discover exactly how much a Colorado blizzard could change the trajectory of two lives colliding in the dark. The morning broke over Aspen with the kind of clarity that follows heavy snow, brilliant white landscape against impossible blue sky, the kind of beauty that belonged on postcards sent by people who didn't know what it meant to choose between survival and promises. Rhett woke at 6 to 17 missed calls from Mrs. Pemberton and a text from Harper that simply read, I forgive you, Daddy, but my heart feels heavy. He sat on the edge of the $1,000 a night bed and put his head in his hands, wondering how many times a man could fail before the people he loved stopped believing in his capacity for redemption. The Jennings presentation was scheduled for 9 at their corporate office on Main Street, a restored Victorian that had probably housed silver barons during Aspen's mining boom. Rhett showered, shaved, dressed in his best suit, the one Caroline had helped him pick out for his first big presentation, back when she was alive to celebrate his victories and cushion his defeats. Victoria met him in the lobby at 7:30, looking like she'd slept perfectly, despite the evidence of yesterday's crack in her armor. Hair, immaculate suit, pressed face carefully blank. She carried 2 coffees and handed him one without comment, black with 2 sugars, which meant she'd somehow learned how he took it, despite never asking. The helicopter can't fly in these conditions. We're driving back to Denver after the meeting. Rhett nodded, calculating. 4 hours if the roads were clear, possibly 6 with weather. He could be home by 5 at the earliest 7 if they hit delays. Harper would be at Mrs. Pemberton's doing homework, trying to pretend her father hadn't shattered her trust. Mr. Mitchell, Victoria's voice cut through his spiraling thoughts. I need you present. Completely. Can you do that? He met her eyes, saw something in them that might have been understanding. Yes. Good. Because Walter Jennings will eat us alive if he senses weakness. The Jennings group occupied 3 floors of their building, all exposed brick and modern glass that somehow worked together. Walter Jennings was 68, silver-haired, with the kind of smile that made you check your wallet after shaking his hand. He'd built his real estate empire by being smarter and more ruthless than everyone else in the room, and he didn't suffer fools or mediocrity. The conference room had mountain views that probably added $1 million to the property value. Jennings sat at the head of the table, flanked by his CFO and general counsel, both looking like they'd been carved from the same granite as the mountains outside. Rhett set up his presentation while Victoria made small talk, watching her transform into someone almost charming. She laughed at Jennings' joke about Denver traffic, complimented his CFO's tie, somehow made it look effortless when he knew every word was calculated for maximum effect. The presentation lasted 90 minutes. Rhett walked them through financial projections, market analysis, risk assessments, answering every question with precision that came from years of living inside spreadsheets. Victoria backed him up perfectly, knowing exactly when to step in and when to let him shine, their rhythm as synchronized as if they'd worked together for decades instead of existing in barely civil tension. Jennings leaned back in his chair when they finished, fingers steepled. Impressive. Patterson's presentation was competent, but this, he gestured at the screens. This is comprehensive. I particularly appreciate the sensitivity analysis on regulatory changes. Shows you're thinking 3 moves ahead. Victoria's smile was genuine for the first time Rhett had seen. We believe in anticipating problems before they become crises, Mr. Jennings. Reactive business is failing business. I want to move forward. 18-month timeline, but I need quarterly reviews with both of you. Deal. They shook hands and Rhett felt the tension drain from his shoulders. $18 million secured, 150 jobs saved. Harper's trust still shattered, but at least the sacrifice had meaning. Outside, the snow was already melting under brilliant sunshine, water running in rivulets down the Victorian's gingerbread trim. Victoria pulled out her phone, frowning at the screen. Weather Service says I-70 through the mountains is a mess. Accidents, closures. We're not getting back to Denver today. Rhett's stomach dropped. What do you mean? We have to... The highway is closed, Mr. Mitchell. Unless you have a helicopter that can fly through a blizzard or a magic carpet, we're stuck. He pulled up the traffic reports on his own phone, saw the cascade of red lines and incident markers. Glenwood Canyon was shut down completely, eastbound traffic being turned around. Next opening estimated at tomorrow noon, possibly later depending on our avalanche risk. There has to be another route. Over Independence Pass closed for winter. Down through Grand Junction and around, that's 8 hours in perfect conditions, which these aren't. We're not getting home tonight. Home. The word landed differently coming from her, like maybe she understood it meant more than just a building with a mortgage. Rhett texted Mrs. Pemberton. Stuck in Aspen. Roads closed. Won't make it back tonight. Please tell Harper I'm sorry. I'll be home tomorrow. The response came in seconds. She's a strong girl, Rhett, but this is becoming a pattern. When you get home, you need to have a real conversation about priorities. Victoria was on her phone already solving problems. Resort manager says they're fully booked. Storm brought in skiers and trapped travelers, but they have one cabin still available, up on Smuggler Mountain, normally rents for $3,000 a night. $3,000, company's paying. It's the only option unless you want to sleep in the rental car. The cabin was a 20-minute drive up a road that probably terrified tourists but was just another Colorado mountain pass to anyone who'd lived through enough winters. Pine trees heavy with fresh snow, glimpses of the town spread below, air so cold and clean it hurt to breathe. The structure itself was straight out of a luxury magazine timber frame river rock fireplace, floor-to-ceiling windows showcasing the Continental Divide. The interior was all exposed beams and leather furniture, a kitchen with appliances that looked like they'd never been used, and up a short staircase a bedroom with a bed large enough to sleep four comfortably. One bedroom. One bed. Rhett stood in the doorway staring at that California king like it was a landmine. Victoria set her bag down with the decisive thump of someone who'd already made peace with uncomfortable situations. I'll take the couch. She glanced at the leather sectional, which was beautiful but definitely not designed for sleeping. Don't be ridiculous, Mr. Mitchell. We're both adults. The bed is large enough for appropriate distance. Ms. Thornton, it's been a long day. We're both exhausted. I'm not sleeping on a couch and I'm not making you sleep on one either. We'll maintain professional boundaries. Her tone suggested the discussion was over. The cabin had been stocked with basics: coffee, bread, eggs, some emergency supplies. Victoria discovered wine in the cabinet, a bottle of California Cabernet that probably cost more than Rhett's weekly grocery budget. She opened it without asking, poured 2 glasses, handed him one. To closing deals and surviving Colorado winters. He took the glass but didn't drink. I should call my daughter. Of course, Harper answered on the first ring. Daddy? Are you okay? I'm fine, baby girl. The roads are closed because of snow. I can't get home until tomorrow. Silence on the other end, the kind that felt like judgment. Then, okay. Harper, I'm so sorry. About the concert, about this, about... It's okay. Mrs. Pemberton made spaghetti. It's not as good as yours, but it's okay. Everything was okay, which meant nothing was okay. They talked for 10 more minutes. Harper, carefully polite, Rhett desperately trying to bridge the distance that had nothing to do with mountains and closed highways. When she said she had to go finish homework, he held the phone after she hung up, staring at her contact photo. Victoria sat by the fireplace, her suit jacket discarded, working on her laptop like this was just another evening in just another office. But something about her posture was different. Shoulders, less rigid. Jaw, less set. She looked up, caught him watching. How is she trying to be brave? She's 8. She shouldn't have to be brave about her father breaking promises. Victoria closed the laptop, a gesture that felt significant. She never stopped working, never surrendered to something as human as rest. You made a choice. Not a good one, perhaps, but the only one available. Sometimes there are no right answers, Mr. Mitchell, just less wrong ones. That's a hell of a philosophy. It's the philosophy of survival. She took a long drink of wine. When I took over Thornton Industries, the board gave me 6 months to prove myself. 6 months to show I could fill my father's shoes, or they'd bring in someone with testicles and an MBA. Every decision I made was scrutinized, every mistake magnified, every sign of emotion weaponized. Rhett sat in the chair across from her, cradling his wine. So you stopped showing emotion. I stopped showing weakness. There's a difference. Her eyes met his over the rim of her glass. Or maybe there isn't. I'm not sure I remember anymore. The vulnerability in those words hung between them like smoke. Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the windows, and the temperature in the cabin dropped enough that Victoria stood and started building a fire. She was surprisingly competent with the task, arranging kindling and logs with the precision she brought to everything. "My father taught me," she explained, seeing his expression. "Said every person should know how to build a fire, change a tire, and balance a budget. Basic survival skills for an uncertain world." Smart man. He was, until the heart attack caught him in his office at 2 in the morning, working on a deal that couldn't wait. She struck the match, held it to the kindling until flames caught. I found him the next morning, 48 hours dead in his chair, computer still running, email unsent. Rhett's chest tightened. Jesus. "Victoria, Don't. I don't want pity. I just want you to understand that this company killed him, and I'll be damned if I let it kill me too. But I also won't let it be taken from this family. So I made a choice. Become hard enough to survive." The fire grew heat, pushing back the cold light, dancing across her face, and revealing depths he'd never imagined. She was beautiful, he realized with a start. Not in the cold corporate way he'd always seen her, but in the way of complicated things, storms, winter, sunsets, equations that balanced perfectly. "What about your daughter? The one you mentioned yesterday?" Victoria's hand trembled on her wine glass. "I told you I heard what you said, but I also heard what you meant." She stood, abruptly walked to the window, presenting her back to him. Outside, snow was falling again, thick flakes catching the light from inside. When she finally spoke, her voice was so quiet he had to lean forward to hear. Her name was going to be Emma. 20 weeks pregnant. Ultrasound showed a perfect profile, tiny hands, strong heartbeat. The father was... She stopped, swallowed. "Doesn't matter. He left when I told him. Said he wasn't ready for that kind of complication." Victoria. "I was going to take maternity leave. Actually planned to step back for 3 months. Had a nursery painted, bought a crib. Then at 23 weeks the cramps started. By 24 weeks she was gone. Miscarriage, they called it. Such a clinical word for the end of everything." Rhett stood without thinking, moved to stand beside her at the window. He didn't touch her, didn't offer platitudes, just stood there, solid and present, while she stared into the darkness. That's when the board started circling. 3 weeks after Emma, they called a meeting. Said I seemed distracted. Asked if I was up to the task. I looked at those men across the conference table, men my father had called friends, and I understood. Grief was weakness. Vulnerability was failure. So I buried it. Buried her. Became what I needed to be. That's why you don't have pictures in your office. Why everything is sterile. Can't lose what you don't let yourself have. The words echoed in the cabin, true and terrible. Rhett thought about Caroline, about the 1,000 ways he kept her alive through Harper, the rituals, the memories, the conscious choice to love what was gone. Victoria had gone the opposite direction, choosing amputation over the slow ache of healing. I keep everything of my wife's. Her coffee preferences, her favorite songs, the way she folded towels. It hurts every day, but it also reminds me what love looked like, so I can show Harper love isn't something to be afraid of. Victoria turned to face him, and her eyes were wet. "Maybe that works for you. But I can't. I won't let myself be that vulnerable again. It cost too much the first time." "Is that really living, though? Or just existing?" "It's surviving. That's all I know how to do anymore." They stood there by the window, snow falling outside, fire crackling inside the cabin, warm and isolated, and somehow feeling like the only real place in a world of pretense. Victoria reached up, wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, and Rhett saw her carefully constructed armor lying in pieces at her feet. "Thank you for telling me about Emma. Don't thank me. And don't repeat it. As far as anyone knows, I've never been anything but exactly what you see in the office. That's not what I see. Then you're seeing things that aren't there." But her voice lacked conviction, and they both knew it. The wine bottle emptied as the evening wore on, conversation shifting from confessions to something lighter. They talked about Colorado winters and terrible corporate coffee and the weird politics of ski resort towns. Victoria admitted she'd never actually skied despite living in Denver her whole life. Rhett told her about teaching Harper to snowboard last year, how his daughter had face-planted 17 times before finally making it down the bunny slope without falling. She sounds stubborn. She gets it from her mother. Caroline would decide something was happening and reality just had to catch up. Like father, like daughter, I suspect. You're not exactly known for giving up on your projections. That's different. Numbers don't have feelings. Numbers don't look at you with disappointment when you choose wrong. Victoria refilled both their glasses, the last of the bottle splitting between them. For what it's worth, Harper's lucky to have you. Not many fathers would care enough to feel guilty. Guilt doesn't pay for broken trust. No, but consistency does. One missed concert doesn't erase 6 years of showing up. Kids are more resilient than we give them credit for. Emma would have been... She stopped, the name slipping out before she could catch it. Would have been, 6 this year. Old enough for kindergarten, old enough for concerts and homework and all the things you get to experience. The grief in her voice was ancient, calcified, the kind that came from years of not being allowed to mourn. Rhett felt something shift in his chest, the anger he'd carried toward Victoria for 2 years crumbling under the weight of understanding her pain. I'm sorry. For what you lost, for what you didn't get to become. I became what I needed to be. CEO, leader, success story. But not a mother, and that's what you really wanted. Her hand clenched around the wine glass, and for a moment he thought she might throw it. Instead, she set it down with careful control and stood. It's late. We should sleep. Long drive tomorrow, once the road's open. The bedroom suddenly felt smaller, with both of them in it. The bed a massive presence neither could ignore. Victoria took the attached bathroom first, emerging in silk pajamas that probably cost more than Rhett's suit. He changed in the bathroom, came out in t-shirt and sweatpants, and they regarded each other across the expanse of white duvet like generals negotiating a treaty. You take the left, I'll take the right. Rhett nodded, climbing in on his designated side and maintaining a careful 18 inches of distance. Victoria did the same, and they lay there in the darkness, neither sleeping, both hyper-aware of the other's breathing. Mr. Mitchell, yes. For what it's worth, I am sorry. About the concert. About putting you in that position. I told myself it was about business, but that's not entirely true. He turned his head to look at her profile in the darkness. What was it about testing whether you were like everyone else, whether you'd eventually resent me enough to leave? Self-fulfilling prophecy disguised as leadership. That's a hell of an admission. This has been a hell of a day. She was quiet for a moment. What you said this morning about my father being heartbroken by the cost, you were right. He would be. He built this company, but he loved his family more. I've lost sight of that balance. It's not too late to find it again. Isn't it? I've burned so many bridges, destroyed so many relationships. The board tolerates me because I make them money. Employees fear me because I've given them reason to. What's left to salvage? Rhett thought about Harper's words, hurt people. Hurt people. Thought about the woman beside him who'd chosen armor over vulnerability, achievement over connection, survival over living. You start by making different choices. Tomorrow, next week. You don't have to fix everything at once. Just choose differently one time. Then again. Then again. Is that what you did after your wife died? I didn't have a choice. Harper needed me to be present or she'd lose both parents, so I learned to show up. Some days that meant just getting out of bed. Other days it meant pancakes and homework help. But I showed up. Victoria turned to face him, and in the darkness, her face was softer than he'd ever seen it. I don't know how to show up anymore. Don't know how to be anything other than what I've built. Then maybe it's time to figure out who you'd be if you weren't so afraid. The words hung in the air between them, challenge and invitation. Victoria's hand moved across the distance between them, finding his in the darkness, and the contact was electric. Not romantic, not sexual, just human, two people reaching for connection in the isolation of a snowbound cabin. "I'm terrified," she whispered. "Of failing, of being replaced, of letting down everyone who depends on me." "I know. I'm terrified too. Of Harper growing up and remembering I chose work over her concert. Of her mother's memory fading. Of being alone forever, because I'm too broken to risk loving someone again." Their fingers intertwined, holding on like drowning swimmers, finding something solid. Outside, the wind howled and snow fell, and the world narrowed to just this room, this bed, this moment of raw honesty neither had planned. "Thank you," Victoria said eventually, "for seeing past what I show the world, for not hating me as much as I deserve. I don't hate you. I never did. I just didn't understand you. And now I think you're the loneliest person I've ever met. And I think you're desperate for someone to give you permission to be human again." She laughed, but it came out as something close to a sob. Permission granted, permission granted. They fell asleep like that, hands clasped across the divide, and when Rhett woke in the gray pre-dawn, he found that distance had vanished. Victoria was curled against his side head on his shoulder, hand on his chest, fitting there like she'd been designed for that exact space. His first instinct was to pull away, to retreat to his side of the bed and re-establish professional boundaries. But she looked so peaceful in sleep, the sharp edges of her face softened, the perpetual tension in her jaw released. When was the last time she'd slept this deeply? When was the last time someone had held her while she did? He stayed still, letting her sleep. Watching the light change outside the windows as sunrise painted the snow-covered mountains in shades of pink and gold. This was dangerous territory. His boss, his adversary, the woman who'd made his life hell and simultaneously held pain that mirrored his own in different keys. Victoria stirred consciousness, returning in slow degrees. Her eyes opened, focused, widened as she realized their position. She started to pull away, apology forming on her lips, but Rhett's other hand came up to gently stop her. "It's okay. We both needed this. This is wildly inappropriate. Probably, but also maybe the most honest either of us has been in years." She studied his face, searching for mockery or agenda, finding only tired understanding. Slowly, she relaxed back against him, and they lay there for another 10 minutes, neither speaking, just existing in the safety of this temporary truce. When they finally rose, showered separately, dressed in yesterday's clothes, the armor didn't quite fit as well as before. Victoria still pulled her hair back, still wore her suit like a uniform, but something in her posture was different, less rigid, more human. They made coffee and toast, moving around the kitchen in surprising synchronization. Victoria checked the highway reports. I-70 was open again, traffic moving slowly, but moving. They could be back in Denver by 2 if they left within the hour. "I should call Harper." Rhett pulled out his phone, but Victoria stopped him with a hand on his arm. "Before you do, I want to say something. What happened here, the conversations, the vulnerability, this can't happen at the office. I need you to understand that." His jaw tightened. "So we pretend none of this was real. We acknowledge that professional boundaries exist for a reason. You work for me. There's a power dynamic that makes this complicated. You're right. But Victoria," he used her first name deliberately, watching her flinch at the intimacy. "What we talked about last night about making different choices, that starts at the office. You can't compartmentalize humanity like it's a weekend hobby." "I can try." "You'll fail. And honestly, I hope you do." The drive back to Denver was quiet, both of them lost in thoughts they couldn't quite articulate. Snow-covered mountains gave way to foothills, then to the sprawl of suburbs, civilization reasserting itself mile by mile. By the time they reached Thornton Industries' parking garage, the armor was back in place on both sides. Thank you for your work on the Jennings account. Your performance was exemplary. Thank you for the opportunity, Ms. Thornton. They stood beside their separate vehicles, and the distance between them felt like miles instead of feet. Victoria pulled out her car keys, hesitated, then met his eyes one more time. Your daughter is very lucky, Mr. Mitchell. I hope you both find a way past this. Then she was gone, driving away in her Mercedes, leaving Rhett standing in the cold garage, wondering if the past 24 hours had been real or just a shared hallucination brought on by altitude and wine. Harper was at Mrs. Tess Pemberton's doing homework at the kitchen table when Rhett arrived. She looked up when he entered, and the careful neutrality on her face broke his heart more than tears would have. Hi, Daddy. Hi, baby girl. He knelt beside her chair, taking her hands. I'm so sorry. About the concert, about being gone an extra day, about all of it. Mrs. Pemberton showed me the videos. I sounded pretty good. You sounded perfect. But Harper, I need you to understand something. What I did was wrong. Choosing work over you was wrong. And I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure it doesn't happen again. You can't promise that. Your job is important. We need the money. The resignation in her voice, the acceptance that she'd always come second to survival, gutted him. We need each other more, and if a job requires me to choose between paying the mortgage and being your father, then I'll find a different job. Really? You are my priority. Always. Everything else is just details we figure out along the way. Harper studied his face, looking for the truth beneath the promise. Whatever she saw there must have satisfied her, because she launched herself at him, wrapping thin arms around his neck, and finally let herself cry. Not the careful tears of someone trying to be brave, but the messy, gulping sobs of a child whose father had hurt her and was now promising not to do it again. Rhett held her and let her cry and made promises he hoped to God he could keep this time. Mrs. Pemberton watched from the doorway, approval in her eyes. When Harper finally pulled back, wiping her nose on her sleeve, the older woman handed over tissues and a knowing smile. Why don't you two go home? I made extra lasagna. It's in the fridge for your dinner. At home, Rhett and Harper made hot chocolate the way Caroline used to, real cocoa powder, whole milk vanilla extract, topped with marshmallows melted just enough to be gooey. They sat on the couch and watched the concert video together. Rhett telling Harper everything he loved about her performance, making her laugh by pointing out Tommy Harris picking his nose in the back row. Daddy, your boss? Is she really mean or is she just sad? The question came out of nowhere, piercing in its accuracy. What makes you ask that? In my dream, Mommy said the sad lady needed someone to show her it's okay to be happy again. Is your boss the sad lady? Rhett thought about Victoria crying in the cabin, about Emma, who never got to be born, about armor built from grief and maintained through fear. Yeah, baby girl, I think maybe she is. Then maybe you should be her friend. Everyone needs friends. It's complicated. She's my boss. There are rules about that kind of thing. Harper shrugged with the wisdom of 8-year-olds who hadn't yet learned that the world was more complicated than kindness. Mommy always said rules are important, but love is importanter. That's not a real word, but you know what I mean. He did know. And as he tucked Harper into bed that night, reading 2 chapters of Charlotte's Web and listening to her breathe in sleep, he thought about Victoria driving home to an empty penthouse apartment, surrounded by success and suffocating from loneliness. Monday morning came too quickly. Rhett walked into Thornton Industries expecting everything to have reset to default Ice Queen, back in control himself. Back in his box, the strange intimacy of the cabin erased like a fever dream. But at 9:30, an email arrived from Victoria. Subject line: Staff meeting, mandatory attendance, 2 p.m. The conference room was packed with every manager and director, people packed against walls, anxiety thick enough to choke on. Victoria stood at the head of the table in her armor of navy suit and sharp heels, but something in her posture was different, less aggressive, more thoughtful. 2 years ago, I took over Thornton Industries from my father. I made changes, some necessary, some excessive. I told myself that success required sacrifice, that compassion was weakness, that profit margins mattered more than people. She paused, and the room held its collective breath. I was wrong. Silence, then murmurs, then Blake Harrison's voice from the back. Did she just say she was wrong? Victoria's lips quirked, not quite a smile, but something adjacent. I did, and I'm about to prove it by implementing changes that will cost this company money in the short term. Flexible working arrangements for parents, mandatory vacation time that actually gets used, emergency family leave paid no questions asked, on-site childcare for employees with children under 10. The murmurs grew louder. Elena Foster looked like she might cry. Bryce Keller was frantically taking notes. These policies take effect immediately. HR will have details by end of week. And one more thing, if any manager retaliates against employees who use these benefits, you'll answer to me personally. She dismissed the meeting, but as people filed out, Rhett caught her eye across the room. She gave him the briefest nod, acknowledgement maybe, or gratitude for the conversation that had planted these seeds. Blake grabbed Rhett's arm in the hallway. What the hell happened in Aspen? Did you perform an exorcism? Just had an honest conversation. Whatever you said, keep saying it. This is the first time in 2 years I've felt like this company gives a damn about us as people. The rest of the week, Rhett watched Victoria navigate the fallout from her announcements. The board called emergency meetings. Some managers grumbled about coddling employees, but Victoria held firm, defending her decisions with data about retention and productivity that she must have compiled at 3 in the morning, because she damn well wasn't going to lose this fight. She was still demanding, still held high standards. But the cruelty was gone, replaced by expectations that felt fair rather than punitive. Friday afternoon, Rhett received another email. My office, 5 p.m., not optional but not bad news. He arrived to find her standing at the window, silhouetted against the Denver skyline. She turned when he entered, and something vulnerable flickered across her face before the professional mask reasserted itself. The board wants to meet you. The Jennings deal combined with your work over the past 2 years has made them take notice. They're talking about promoting you to Director of Financial Analysis. That's wow. Thank you. Don't thank me. You earned it. She walked to her desk, picked up the photo frame that had been face down, turned it to show him the ultrasound image. I'm having this framed properly, putting it on my desk. Emma deserves to be remembered, not hidden. Rhett's throat tightened. I think that's exactly right. I'm also starting therapy. Real therapy, not just pretending I'm fine. It's time to deal with things I've been running from. That takes courage. No. Courage was you standing in this office and fighting for your daughter. Courage was you seeing past my armor and refusing to let me hide behind it. This is just overdue housekeeping. They stood there in the fading light, and Rhett understood that whatever was happening between them wasn't romance. Not yet. Maybe not ever. It was something more complicated. 2 broken people recognizing each other's scars and choosing to stop hiding them. For what it's worth, I think you're going to be okay. I think we both are. Ask me again in a year. See if I've managed to not destroy everything good that tries to come into my life. Deal. As Rhett drove home, he thought about Harper's words, the sad lady needs someone to show her it's okay to be happy again. He thought about Victoria's slow thaw, about armor coming down one painful piece at a time. He thought about Caroline's voice in his head, not haunting him but guiding him. Hurt people, but healing people can heal people too. The universe had trapped them in a snowstorm for a reason. Now he just had to trust that the thaw, when it came, would reveal solid ground beneath all that ice. Spring came to Denver like a promise, kept snow melting into streams that carried winter's memory down from the mountains. 3 months had passed since Victoria Thornton stood in front of her staff and admitted she'd been wrong, since Rhett Mitchell had chosen to see the human being beneath the armor. The changes at Thornton Industries were seismic. Employee turnover dropped 40%. Productivity climbed. The board grumbled about quarterly costs but couldn't argue with annual projections showing the company on track for record profits. Victoria's face appeared in Denver Business Journal with the headline, "Ice Queen Thaws How Compassionate Leadership Drives Success." She'd framed the article and hung it in her office bathroom where no one would see it, a private joke about public perception, finally catching up to private truth. But the real transformation happened in smaller moments. Victoria leaving the office at 6 instead of 9, actually using the gym membership she'd been paying for, but ignoring showing up at the on-site child care center's ribbon cutting and staying to read stories to a group of mesmerized 4-year-olds. Rhett watched these changes from his new corner office on the 20th floor, Director of Financial Analysis etched on the nameplate that still felt surreal. His team had grown to 12 analysts, and he found he liked mentoring almost as much as he liked spreadsheets. Blake Harrison worked under him now, grateful to have a boss who remembered that numbers represented people's lives, not just profit margins. They were circling each other, Victoria and Rhett professional by day, but with a current running underneath that neither acknowledged out loud. Coffee meetings that ran long, projects that required collaboration, emails sent at 11 p.m. that weren't strictly necessary but created connection anyway. Harper noticed. Kids always did. "Your boss came up a lot at dinner tonight, Daddy. You said her name 6 times. Rhett looked up from the dishes suds dripping from his hands. "Did I?" "Yup, I counted. Victoria said this. Victoria thinks that Victoria's new policy about—" Harper ticked them off on her fingers. "You talk about her more than you talk about Mrs. Pemberton, and Mrs. Pemberton makes us cookies. She's my boss. We work together a lot." Harper's 8-year-old skepticism could cut through steel. "Is she still sad?" The question caught him sideways. "Less sad, I think. She's working on it." "Good. Sad people need help being happy again. That's what Mommy would say." Caroline's voice echoed in the words, and Rhett felt the familiar ache of missing her twist in his chest. But underneath it, something new, permission maybe to imagine a future that didn't erase the past but grew alongside it. The invitation arrived on a Thursday in late April, printed on heavy cardstock that screamed corporate formality. Sterling Tech Innovations Annual Gala. Black tie. Spouses welcome. Victoria's assistant had hand-delivered it to his office with a note attached in Victoria's sharp handwriting. "Attendance mandatory for directors. Also, I'm terrible at these things and could use an ally. VT." Rhett stared at the invitation, specifically at "Spouses welcome," and felt his stomach twist. He hadn't been to a formal event since Caroline's funeral, hadn't owned a tuxedo since their wedding, hadn't considered that moving forward might eventually mean navigating social situations designed for couples. Blake knocked on his open door. "You get one of those death sentences too, the gala, yeah. Company pays for the tux rental, small mercies. My wife's already planning her dress like it's the Oscars." Blake studied Rhett's face. "You going solo?" "Harper's too young for a black tie event, and I can't exactly bring my neighbor." "Could ask Victoria to be your +1. Oh, wait, she's the host. Never mind." The joke landed wrong, and Blake must have seen it because his expression shifted to concern. "You okay, man?" "Yeah, just been a while since I did the formal event thing. Caroline was always good at that stuff." "For what it's worth, I think your wife would want you to live. Not just survive, but actually live. And maybe that starts with putting on a monkey suit and eating rubber chicken with your co-workers." Rhett laughed despite himself. Inspiring pep talk. I try. The tuxedo fitting was an exercise in feeling like an imposter. The tailor at Nordstrom kept adjusting the jacket pinning here, marking there, talking about break and drape like Rhett understood the language. When he finally saw himself in the mirror, hair-styled bow tie, straight shoes shined to military precision, he barely recognized the man staring back. Caroline would have loved this, he thought. She would have insisted on a dozen photos, straightened his tie 3 times, even though it was already perfect. Kissed him and left lipstick he'd have to wipe away. Harper's voice interrupted his spiral. "Daddy, you look like James Bond." He turned to find his daughter perched on the fitting room bench legs, swinging eyes wide with approval. Mrs. Pemberton had brought her to the mall for new school shoes, and they'd stopped by to check his progress. "I look ridiculous. You look handsome, like in the pictures from when you married Mommy." The wedding photos were in an album in the hall closet looked at on anniversaries, and moments when grief needed evidence that joy had existed once. Rhett knelt beside Harper, careful not to wrinkle the unfinished tuxedo. "You really think Mommy would approve? I think Mommy would say it's about time you went to a party. You never have fun anymore." "I have fun. We went sledding last month." "That was fun for me. You mostly worried about me breaking bones." Mrs. Pemberton chuckled from the doorway. "She's got you there, Rhett. When's the last time you did something just for yourself? Not for Harper, not for work, but because you wanted to." He couldn't remember. Every choice for 3 years had been calculated against Harper's needs, financial requirements, professional obligations. Joy had become theoretical, something other people experienced while he survived. The gala is work. The gala is also an opportunity to remember you're a person outside of being a father and an analyst, to maybe enjoy an evening. Mrs. Pemberton's knowing look suggested she suspected more than she was saying. The afternoon of the gala, Rhett picked up the finished tuxedo and felt his anxiety ratchet up with every mile closer to home. This wasn't just a work event. It was Victoria's debut as the new face of Thornton Industries, the first major public appearance since her transformation, and somehow Rhett had been cast as supporting player in her narrative arc. His phone buzzed. Text from Victoria. "Please tell me you're not planning to bail on this nightmare. I need at least one person there who's seen me cry and won't judge me for wanting to." He typed back, "Wouldn't dream of it. Someone has to make sure you don't fire anyone mid-appetizers." "Ha. Ha. See you at 7. Don't be late." The Brown Palace Hotel had been hosting Denver's elite since 1892. All Italian Renaissance Revival architecture and old money elegance. The ballroom glittered with crystal chandeliers and women in gowns that cost more than Rhett's first car. Men in tuxedos clustered around the bar discussing deals and stocks and the Broncos draft picks with equal intensity. Rhett arrived at 7 sharp, handed his coat to the attendant, and immediately felt underdressed despite the tailor's assurances. Everyone here seemed to know the unwritten rules of wealth and power, moving through the space with the confidence of belonging. "Mr. Mitchell." Victoria materialized beside him, and the sight of her stole his breath. She wore emerald silk that brought out the gray-blue of her eyes, her hair down for the first time since the cabin, cascading over one shoulder in waves that softened every sharp angle. Minimal jewelry, minimal makeup, but radiating a confidence that had nothing to do with armor and everything to do with acceptance. "You look..." He stumbled over words. "That's a good color on you. You clean up surprisingly well yourself. The tux is an improvement over your usual khakis and button-downs." They smiled at each other, and the moment stretched long enough that people nearby started noticing. Victoria caught herself first, gesturing toward the bar. "Shall we get this over with?" 3 hours of small talk, a rubber chicken dinner speeches that last too long, and then we can all go home and remember why we hate these things. Inspiring pep talk. I try. The evening unfolded in waves of obligation. Victoria worked the room with practiced ease, introducing Rhett to board members and major clients, her hand occasionally touching his elbow to guide him through the social minefield. He found himself enjoying it more than expected, the conversations less tedious when he had Victoria's quiet commentary whispered in his ear during transitions. "See that man in the gray suit, Gerald Patterson? Tried to poach you 3 times last year. Offered you 20% more than I was paying." Rhett blinked. "I never got any offers." "Because I intercepted them. Told HR to quietly make them disappear. Not my finest ethical moment, but I wasn't about to lose my best analyst." "That's controlling, manipulative, yes. Which is why I'm telling you now. If Patterson approaches you tonight, he's legitimate. I won't interfere." Before Rhett could process that confession, they were swept into another cluster of executives, more handshakes, more small talk about market conditions and Federal Reserve policy. But the revelation sat in his chest like a stone. Victoria had valued him enough to fight dirty, to keep him even in her Ice Queen days. Dinner was announced, and the crowd flowed toward tables marked with numbered placards. Rhett found his seat at table 3, surprised to see Victoria's name card beside his. She noticed his expression and shrugged. "Host's prerogative. I can sit wherever I want, and I choose to sit next to the only person here who won't bore me to death with venture capital stories." The meal was exactly as promised: chicken that tasted like expensive cardboard vegetables arranged for aesthetics rather than flavor wine that cost more per bottle than Rhett's monthly grocery budget. But the company made it bearable. Victoria kept up a running commentary on the other guests, pointing out affairs and feuds and alliances with the kind of insider knowledge that came from years of paying attention to human dynamics. "See Jennifer Walsh at table 5. She's embezzling from her husband's company. I discovered it last month during due diligence for a potential acquisition. Confronted her privately, gave her 30 days to return the money and come clean, or I'd report it." "Did she?" "She did. Turned out her husband was having an affair and she was building an escape fund. They're in counseling now. Still together, still messy, but at least she's not committing felonies." Rhett studied Victoria's profile, seeing the complexity there, still tough, still demanding, but tempered now with mercy that came from understanding that people were flawed and struggling and trying their best in impossible situations. "You're staring." "I'm impressed. The Victoria from 6 months ago would have destroyed her publicly." "The Victoria from 6 months ago was destroying herself. Turns out you can't burn everything around you without inhaling the smoke." She took a sip of wine. "Therapy's going well, by the way. My therapist says I'm making remarkable progress for someone who spent 36 years believing emotions were character flaws." "What changed?" Victoria's eyes met his held, and something electric passed between them. "A snowstorm. A cabin. A man who refused to let me hide." The speeches began before Rhett could respond. Board chairman droning about fiscal responsibility and shareholder value. Victoria rose to give her own address, and Rhett watched her command the room with the same authority she brought to boardrooms, but softened now with humor and humility that made her human rather than untouchable. 2 years ago, I inherited this company and nearly destroyed it by confusing strength with cruelty. I'm standing here tonight to tell you I was wrong. Leadership isn't about crushing weakness. It's about recognizing that everyone has struggles. Everyone has breaking points, and our job as leaders is to help people be their best selves, not punish them for being human." She paused, and the silence was absolute. Thornton Industries is profitable not despite treating employees with compassion, but because of it. Turns out people work harder when they're not terrified. Who knew? Laughter rippled through the room. Victoria smiled, the expression transforming her face into something radiant. "I want to specifically recognize one person tonight. Rhett Mitchell, our Director of Financial Analysis, who had the courage to tell me I was wrong when no one else would. Who reminded me that numbers represent people's lives and that success without humanity is just expensive emptiness." "Stand up, Rhett." Every head turned toward him. Rhett stood awkwardly face-burning while applause rolled through the ballroom. Victoria's eyes found his across the distance, and the gratitude there was unmistakable. When the speeches ended and dancing began, Rhett escaped to the balcony for air. The night was cool, May in Denver still flirting with winter, and the city lights stretched toward the mountains in a glittering grid. He leaned against the railing, breathing deep, trying to settle the chaos in his chest. Hiding from adoring fans. Victoria joined him at the railing, maintaining careful distance, but her presence filling the space between them. I shouldn't have put you on the spot like that. I just wanted people to know that real change came from real conversations, not corporate mandate. It's fine. Just not used to being the center of attention. You should be. You're good at what you do. Exceptional, actually. Patterson wasn't wrong to want you. They stood in comfortable silence, watching traffic move through downtown streets, the sounds of the party muted behind the closed balcony doors. Finally, Victoria spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. I've been thinking about the cabin a lot. About what you said about making different choices. And I think I've been making different choices professionally, but I've been hiding from the harder ones, the personal ones. She turned to face him. I like you, Rhett. Not as an employee, not as a project, but as a person who makes me want to be braver than I've ever been. His heart hammered against his ribs. Victoria, I know it's complicated. Power dynamics, HR policies, the fact that you're still healing from losing your wife. I'm not asking for anything. I just needed you to know that somewhere in the past 3 months, friendship shifted into something I don't have words for yet. Rhett's mind spun through possibilities and consequences. Harper's face asking if the sad lady was still sad. Caroline's voice in his dreams telling him it was okay to live. The board's reaction if their CEO dated a subordinate. His own fear of risking his heart when the last time ended in a hospital room and a future that collapsed. I don't know if I'm ready for this. Neither do I, which is why I'm not asking for this. I'm just telling you it exists, and if you're ever ready to explore what it might mean, I'll be here. Waiting, hoping, terrified out of my mind. The vulnerability in those words cracked something open in Rhett's chest. He reached for her hand, threading his fingers through hers, feeling the tremor in her grip that said this confession had cost her everything. Can we start with friendship? Real friendship, not whatever corporate alliance we've been performing. I'd like that. And maybe, he stopped, gathered courage. Maybe you could meet Harper officially, not just in passing at the office. If we're going to figure out what this is, she's part of the equation. Victoria's eyes went wide. You want me to meet your daughter? I want you to meet the most important person in my life. Because if this is going somewhere, wherever that is, she needs to be part of the journey. What if she hates me? She won't. She's the one who's been telling me to be your friend since the concert. Says everyone needs friends. They stood there on the balcony, hands clasped, while music and laughter spilled from the ballroom, and the city sprawled below them, full of possibility and risk in equal measure. This was the cliff edge Rhett realized. The moment where safety ended and faith began. Sunday brunch, my house, noon. I'll make pancakes and Harper will interrogate you about everything. Fair warning, she's smarter than both of us combined. Victoria laughed, the sound free and genuine. I'm more terrified of an 8-year-old's judgment than any board meeting I've ever attended. As you should be. The following days, Rhett questioned his sanity approximately 400 times. What was he thinking, inviting his boss to meet his daughter? What if Harper saw through whatever this was and called him out? What if Victoria's corporate persona showed up instead of the woman from the cabin? What if he was making a catastrophic mistake that would blow up both his job and his carefully reconstructed life? Harper, meanwhile, was ecstatic. The sad lady is coming to brunch. Do I need to clean my room? Should I hide my toys? What if she doesn't like me? She's going to love you, princess. Impossible not to. What if I don't like her? The question stopped Rhett cold. Then we'll figure it out. But I think you will. She's funny and smart, and she's working really hard to be happy again. Like you were after Mommy died. Yeah, baby girl, exactly like that. Sunday arrived with brilliant sunshine and Rhett's anxiety at DEFCON 1. He made pancakes, set the table, changed his shirt 3 times before Harper informed him the blue one looked best. By 11:45, he was checking the window every 30 seconds like a teenager before prom. Victoria's Mercedes pulled up at 11:58. She emerged carrying a bakery box and looking nothing like the CEO who commanded boardrooms. Jeans, simple blouse, minimal makeup, hair in a ponytail, vulnerable and real and so beautiful it made his chest ache. Harper beat him to the door, opening it before Victoria could knock. Hi, I'm Harper. You're Victoria. Daddy made pancakes, but they're probably cold now because he made them at 10 and it's almost noon. Come in. Victoria blinked at the verbal barrage, then smiled. Hi, Harper. Your dad told me you're the smart one in this relationship. I believe it. He probably said I'm smarter than both of you. I am. But I'm also 8, so there's lots I don't know yet. Like taxes and why grown-ups drink coffee when it tastes like dirt. Those are excellent questions, especially the coffee one. Inside the house felt suddenly smaller with Victoria in it. Rhett watched her take in the details, family photos on the mantel, Harper's artwork magnetized to the fridge, the comfortable clutter of a house actually lived in rather than just occupied. Her eyes lingered on a photo of Caroline, and something painful flickered across her face before she schooled it away. Brunch was chaos in the best way. Harper peppered Victoria with questions about being a CEO, what it was like running a company, whether she ever wanted to fire someone just because they were annoying. Victoria answered honestly, not talking down, treating Harper like a person whose opinion mattered. Do you have kids? The question landed like a grenade. Rhett started to intervene, but Victoria held up a hand. She set down her fork and met Harper's curious gaze. I almost did. A little girl named Emma. But she died before she was born, and I was very sad for a very long time. Harper processed this with the seriousness it deserved. Is that why you were mean to Daddy, because you were sad? Yes. I was hurting, and when people hurt, sometimes they hurt others without meaning to. Your daddy helped me understand that, and now I'm trying to be better. Good. Daddy's the best, and people should be nice to him. Victoria's smile was soft. You're absolutely right. He is the best. After brunch, Harper dragged Victoria upstairs to see her room, chattering about school and friends and the science fair project on cloud formation. Rhett cleared dishes and listened to their voices overhead, his daughter's bright enthusiasm and Victoria's patient responses, and felt something settle in his chest that had been unsettled for 3 years. This could work. Against all odds and common sense, this strange triangle of broken people finding wholeness together, it could actually work. When Victoria came back downstairs an hour later, Harper was showing her the scrapbook of Caroline, explaining who Mommy was and why Daddy still got sad sometimes. Victoria listened with complete attention, asking questions that honored the memory rather than competing with it. She sounds like an amazing person. She was. But she's gone now, and Daddy needs someone new to love. Not to replace Mommy, you can't replace people, but to love in a different way. That's okay, right? To love new people even when you miss old people. Victoria's eyes glistened. That's more than okay, Harper. That's brave and beautiful and exactly right. At the door, when it was time for Victoria to leave, Harper hugged her without prompting. You can come back. Daddy makes better pancakes when he's not nervous, and you should try them when they're actually good. I'd like that very much. Alone again, Rhett and Harper cleaned up the kitchen together. His daughter was unusually quiet, thoughtful in a way that meant big questions were forming. Daddy, do you love Victoria? The question hung in the air, sharp and unavoidable. Rhett dried a dish, slowly buying time to formulate an answer that was honest but appropriate. I don't know yet, Princess. I like her a lot. I care about whether she's happy. But love is a big word, and I need to be sure before I use it. But you could love her someday. Maybe. Would that be okay with you? Harper climbed onto the counter, swinging her legs, looking far too wise for 8 3/4. Mommy loved you, and Mommy loved me, and Mommy would want us both to be happy, not just sad forever. So yeah, Daddy, it would be okay. Permission granted by the person whose opinion mattered most. Rhett pulled Harper into a hug and let himself imagine a future that included more than just survival. The following weeks, Victoria became a fixture in their lives in small ways. Sunday brunches became routine. She attended Harper's spring concert front row beside Rhett, recording everything on her phone. Brought Harper books from the used bookstore downtown, always managing to pick titles the librarian had recommended. Learned to play Go Fish and lost gracefully when Harper's shark instincts demolished her. At the office, they maintained professional boundaries that felt less like performance and more like respect. Victoria was still demanding, still held high standards, but the fear was gone. Employees stopped avoiding her in hallways. The coffee room conversations shifted from complaints to cautious optimism. The board noticed. Quarterly reports showed sustained growth, employee satisfaction scores at all-time highs, retention rates that made competitors envious. At the June board meeting, Chairman Wallace actually smiled when he announced that Thornton Industries had been named one of Colorado's top workplaces for the first time in a decade. Whatever you're doing, Victoria, keep doing it. The transformation has been remarkable. Walking out of that meeting, Victoria found Rhett waiting in the hall. Did you hear? We made the list. You made the list, I just run numbers. We both know that's not true, but I'll take the compliment. She glanced around to ensure privacy. Harper's birthday is coming up. Late June, right? 23rd. How did you... I pay attention. What's she want? Besides a puppy, which I know you've been resisting. Rhett laughed. How do you know about the puppy campaign? She's mentioned it exactly 14 times in my presence. The girl is relentless. She gets that from her mother. I bet she does. Victoria's expression turned serious. What if I got her one A puppy? Small, hypoallergenic from the shelter, so we're saving a life. I know it's a big gift, but I want to do something meaningful for her, for both of you. The offer landed sideways, touching something raw. Caroline had promised Harper a puppy the week before she died, a promise that couldn't be kept when Rhett was drowning in grief and barely managing to keep them both fed. Now Victoria was offering to fulfill that promise, not as replacement, but as honor. You're serious? Completely, unless it's overstepping. I'm still learning where the boundaries are. It's not overstepping. It's... His voice caught. It's one of the kindest things anyone's offered. Harper would lose her mind. Then let's make it happen. We'll go to the shelter Saturday, let her pick one out, surprise her on her birthday. Saturday at the Denver Animal Shelter was controlled chaos. Dogs of every size and description barked from kennels' tails, wagging, hopeful eyes tracking every visitor. Victoria had done her research, identifying 3 potential candidates, all small breed mixes, all kid-friendly, all desperately needing homes. That one. Harper pointed at a scruffy terrier mix with one ear that stood up and one that flopped over. His name is Scout. He's perfect. The shelter volunteer confirmed Scout was good with kids, house-trained, healthy, despite his rough start. Harper sat in the meet-and-greet room, and Scout immediately crawled into her lap, licking her face while she giggled uncontrollably. Can we really keep him? Daddy, really, truly? Rhett looked at Victoria, saw her eyes bright with unshed tears, and nodded. Really, truly. The paperwork took an hour. Victoria paid the adoption fee before Rhett could argue. Bought supplies, bed leash, collar, food, toys with the efficiency of someone checking items off a military operation. By the time they loaded into Victoria's car, Scout was wearing a blue collar and Harper was radiating joy so pure it hurt to witness. "This is the best birthday present ever, even better than the bike you got me when I was 6. Thank Victoria. This was her idea. Harper launched herself at Victoria from the back seat, wrapping thin arms around her neck. "Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. You're the best almost stepmom ever." Silence. Sharp, absolute, terrifying. Victoria's eyes found Rhett's in the rearview mirror. He saw panic there, and something else, hope maybe, or terror that looked like hope if you squinted. "Harper, we've talked about assumptions. It's okay." Victoria's voice was steady. "Harper, I'm not your stepmom yet, but if your dad and I keep being friends, and if we all decide together that we want to be a family, then maybe someday I could be. Would that be okay with you?" Duh. That's why I said it. Kids. No filter, no subtlety, just emotional truth delivered like a tactical nuke. That night, after Harper and Scout were both asleep in Harper's room, Rhett and Victoria sat on the porch with beers and the comfortable silence of people who'd learned each other's rhythms. "I'm sorry about the stepmom thing. She's 8 and she sees the world in simple terms." "Don't apologize. She's not wrong about the direction we're heading. Unless I'm misreading everything, you're not misreading. But Victoria, I need you to understand what you're signing up for. Package deal me Harper memories of Caroline that will always be present. Sunday morning rituals and bedtime stories and school concerts that can't be missed. My life isn't flexible anymore. It's built around an 8-year-old who's already lost one parent and can't afford to lose another." Victoria turned to face him, and in the porch light, she was luminous. "I know exactly what I'm signing up for. A man who keeps promises. A daughter who's smarter than both of us. A family that's been broken and put itself back together stronger. I'm not asking to replace Caroline. I'm asking to build something new alongside her memory. If you'll let me." This was the moment. The cliff edge where faith replaced fear, where the future stopped being theoretical and became possible. Rhett reached for Victoria's hand and pulled her closer until their foreheads touched. "I'm terrified." "Me too. But I think I'm falling in love with you." Present tense. Actively falling. Victoria's breath hitched. Yeah. It's inconvenient and complicated and probably violates 17 HR policies, but there it is. I'm in love with you too. Have been since that night in the cabin when you refused to let me hide. I just didn't have words for it yet." They kissed, then soft and tentative, testing the shape of this new thing they were building. It tasted like beer and promise, and the particular sweetness of second chances that came with earned wisdom. When they pulled apart, Victoria was smiling. "So, what now? Do we tell HR the board Harper?" "Harper already knows. I'm pretty sure she's been planning our wedding since the first brunch. She is alarmingly perceptive. Gets it from her mother." The words came out automatically, and Rhett waited for the guilt to follow. But it didn't. Just peace and Caroline's voice in his memory saying something she'd told him 100 times. Love isn't a finite resource, you know. You don't run out by giving it away. You just make more. Over the following months, they navigated the complexity of dating while maintaining professional boundaries. Victoria insisted they tell HR who created a disclosure form and updated reporting structures, so Rhett reported to the CFO instead of directly to Victoria. The board raised eyebrows but couldn't argue with results. The company was thriving, and whatever personal relationship existed between CEO and director wasn't affecting performance. Harper bloomed with Scout and Victoria both in her life. The dog slept in her bed, followed her everywhere, learned tricks with the single-minded determination Harper applied to everything. Victoria showed up for soccer games and parent-teacher conferences, asked about homework, helped with science projects, filled the mother-shaped space without trying to erase Caroline's memory. Mrs. Pemberton watched it all with knowing approval. Caroline would like her, she told Rhett one Sunday after Victoria left. She'd appreciate that Victoria doesn't try to compete with a ghost. Fall arrived then, winter again, the year turning full circle. Rhett stood in his kitchen making pancakes on a December morning, Harper setting the table, Scout underfoot, hoping for dropped bacon, and felt happiness that had nothing to do with absence of pain. Joy that was present tense, active real. Victoria arrived at 8, letting herself in with the key Rhett had given her in October, carrying coffee and newspapers and the comfortable belonging of someone who'd earned her place in their routine. Morning, family. She kissed Harper's head, scratched Scout's ears, and moved to stand beside Rhett at the stove hip, bumping his in familiar affection. Harper looked up from her orange juice. "Are you going to ask her today?" Rhett's hand jerked spatula clattering against the pan. "Harper, what you've been carrying that ring around for 2 weeks. I saw it in your sock drawer when I was putting away laundry. You're not very good at hiding things." Victoria's head whipped toward him. Ring, this was not how he'd planned this. He'd imagined something romantic, a restaurant, flowers, a carefully rehearsed speech, not his kitchen on a random Sunday with pancakes burning and his daughter spoiling the surprise. But Harper was right. He'd been carrying the ring for 2 weeks, waiting for perfect timing that would never arrive because life wasn't about perfect timing. It was about choosing love when it showed up, however messy and complicated and inconvenient. Rhett turned off the stove, wiped his hands on his jeans, and pulled the small velvet box from his pocket. Victoria's eyes went wide. "This wasn't how I planned this. I was going to do something memorable and romantic and worthy of you." But Harper's right, waiting for perfect is just another way of hiding from real. He opened the box to reveal a simple platinum band with 3 small diamonds. It was Caroline's engagement ring. Harper and I talked about it, and we both agreed that if I was going to propose, it should be with something that carries history. Not erasing the past, but bringing it forward into the future. Victoria's hands covered her mouth, tears already falling. "Victoria Thornton, you crashed into my life like a blizzard and forced me to remember I was more than just survival and sacrifice. You've loved my daughter like she's yours, honored my wife's memory, and made me believe that broken people can heal each other if they're brave enough to try. Will you marry us? Not just me, but this whole complicated, beautiful mess we've built." "Yes," the word came out choked. "Yes. Absolutely yes." Harper cheered. Scout barked. Rhett slid the ring onto Victoria's finger and kissed her while pancakes burned forgotten on the stove. Later, when they told Mrs. Pemberton, the older woman pulled out her phone and showed them a text from Harper sent 2 weeks earlier. "Mrs. P. Daddy's going to propose to Victoria soon. I can tell. Mommy would be so happy." The wedding happened in spring at a small ceremony in their backyard. 50 people who mattered rather than 500 who were obligated. Harper was maid of honor in a dress she'd picked herself. Scout wore a bow tie and behaved surprisingly well, and Mrs. Pemberton cried through the entire ceremony. When Rhett and Victoria exchanged vows, they wrote their own. Victoria went first, voice strong despite tears. "Rhett, you taught me that strength isn't about never breaking. It's about having the courage to put yourself back together. You saw through my armor to the terrified woman underneath and loved her anyway. I promise to be a partner worthy of your trust. A mother figure Harper deserves, and a woman brave enough to keep choosing love even when it's scary. I'm trading my kingdom of ice for this home of warmth, and I've never been happier." Rhett took a shaky breath before responding. "Victoria, you came into my life when I'd forgotten how to live, and you reminded me that survival isn't enough. You've honored Caroline's memory by building new love alongside it, not erasing it. You've shown Harper that families can grow and change and strengthen through loss. I promise to be your safe place, your partner in both triumph and struggle, and to never let you retreat behind armor again. You're not the Ice Queen anymore. You're just Victoria, and that's more than enough." The minister pronounced them married, and as they kissed, Harper whispered loud enough for everyone to hear, "Finally, I've been planning this since February." At the reception, Blake gave a toast about how Rhett had somehow tamed the dragon of corporate cruelty through the radical act of seeing her humanity. Elena spoke about how Victoria's transformation had changed not just Thornton Industries, but her own understanding of what leadership could mean. But the most important moment came when Harper stood up 8 going on 40 and raised her juice glass. "I want to say something about my new mom. Victoria didn't try to replace my mommy Caroline. She made space for both of them to matter. She taught me that families aren't just born, they're built by people who choose to love each other, even when it's hard. And she makes my dad smile again, which is maybe the best present anyone could give me." To Victoria, the sad lady who learned to be happy again. To Victoria, the room echoed glasses, clinking laughter and love, filling the spring air. That night after guests departed, and Harper was asleep upstairs with Scout Rhett and Victoria stood in their backyard looking at the mountains. The same peaks that had trapped them in a blizzard a year ago, that had forced 2 broken people into a cabin where walls came down and truth spilled out. "Do you ever think about that night at the cabin?" Victoria leaned into his side. "Every day. I think about how close I came to missing this Harper actual happiness instead of just achievement. If that storm hadn't hit, if we'd made it back to Denver on schedule, maybe we'd still be circling each other at a distance, too scared to admit we needed connection. The universe put people together for a reason. That's what Harper said. Your daughter is way too smart for everyone's good." "I know. It's terrifying and wonderful." They stood together, husband and wife, watching the stars come out over Colorado, and Rhett felt Caroline's presence not as loss but as blessing. She'd loved him once, taught him how to be a father, left behind a daughter who carried her wisdom. Now Victoria was teaching him how to love again, differently, but no less deeply. "Thank you," he said into the darkness. "For what? For being brave enough to thaw, for loving us, for building this." Victoria turned in his arms, face tilted up to his. "You know what I learned from all of this? That ice queens don't stay frozen forever. Sometimes they just need someone patient enough to wait for spring and brave enough to start the thaw. You were my spring, Rhett Mitchell." They kissed under the stars, while inside their house their daughter slept peacefully, dreaming of the family they'd all chosen to become. Not perfect, not without shadows of loss, but whole in the way that mattered, bound by love that had been tested and emerged stronger. The blizzard had passed, spring had come, and 3 broken people had built themselves into something beautiful, one brave choice at a time. Sometimes the universe did know exactly what it was doing when it trapped 2 people in a snowstorm with only one bed between them.